The Subcommittee on Energy and the Environment will come to order. Today, the Subcommittee will consider H.R. 515, the Radioactive Import Deterrence Act, sponsored by Representatives Gordon and Matheson and Terry. Pursuant to Committee Rule 9, the Chairman and Ranking Member will have 5 minutes each for opening statements, and any other Subcommittee members who wish to make an opening statement will have 3 minutes. The Chair will recognize himself for an opening statement. Today, the Subcommittee will mark up H.R. 515, the Radioactive Import Deterrence Act, a bipartisan bill introduced by Congressman Gordon, Matheson, and Terry. This important legislation will ban the import of low-level radioactive waste into the United States. This is a bipartisan bill co-sponsored by 80 House members, including 20 Democrat and 4 Republican members of either the Subcommittee or the full Energy and Commerce Committee. H.R. 515 was drafted in response to an attempt to bring 20,000 tons of Italian low-level nuclear waste into the United States to be processed in Tennessee and disposed of in Utah. Italy wants to ship their waste here because they have no disposal capabilities there, and Italy is by no means the only country in this position. In fact, no other nuclear waste-producing country in the world allows the importation and disposal of foreign nuclear waste. Why should the United States take Italian nuclear waste if they won't take ours? I think the answer is simple. We on this subcommittee will not allow the United States to be the world's nuclear dumping ground. H.R. 515 will preserve existing U.S. disposal sites for our own domestic low-level nuclear waste. Today we have a few sites in the country which dispose of our low-level waste. For the moment, this is adequate. However, it is extremely difficult to establish new disposal sites. It is only practical that we carefully manage what existing domestic low-level nuclear waste disposal capacity we have to ensure that we do not face a crisis in the future. This will be even more critical if new nuclear reactors are built in this country. H.R. 515 will maintain the integrity of the low-level waste compact system and protect the states from being forced to accept foreign nuclear waste. This bill would preserve existing disposal sites for our own domestic low-level waste. When we established the low-level waste compact system, the Congress did not intend for the compacts to handle foreign waste. We empowered the states to establish sites for common use within the various regions and specifically allowed them to exclude waste from outside those regions. If we fail to protect low-level waste compact systems, which were supposed to be domestic disposal sites, could be turned into global nuclear waste dumps. If that occurs, we would end up in a position where many states are unable or unwilling to participate in these compacts at all, leaving domestic companies with nowhere to go to dispose of their radioactive waste. That would not be a good development for the nuclear industry or for the nation. I now turn and recognize my good friend, the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Upton.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I begin my statement, I would like to submit for the record a letter from the U.S. Nuclear Infrastructure Council.
Without objection, it will be included.
And I want to just take a moment to read one paragraph from their letter. It says this: in the Council's view, this legislation is unnecessary, unsound, and myopic policy. It overrides the current regulatory structure, which has ensured safe transport, processing, and disposal of nuclear materials over 5 decades in the United States, and facilitated a fair hearing on the merits of any proposed importation of low-level radioactive waste on a case-by-case basis. Although this legislation seeks to limit its prohibitions to importation of low-level radioactive waste, it has precedential potential to have counterproductive implications in a number of arenas important to ongoing and future nuclear generation, given the nature of nuclear commerce and fuel cycle management. The legislation will clearly have an adverse impact on jobs, hinging on work related to U.S. companies engaged in nuclear-related environmental management, and put these U.S. companies at a competitive disadvantage with respect to their foreign competitors, end quote. I am opposed to the legislation that we're marking up today. The issue of waste disposal and new nuclear power plants are in fact directly related. And I see this bill as anti-nuclear power, and the bill is in essence a political NIMBY issue. While I do have great respect for my friends that support this legislation, I am concerned that it will be used by the opponents of nuclear power to delay new plants from coming online and cause further roadblocks to the recycling and safe disposal of spent fuel and low-level waste. Despite what the proponents of this legislation may claim, this is not about importing low-level waste from Italy, which happens to be identical to the domestic waste safely being processed and disposed of today. As we heard from GAO and the NRC, there is no capacity issue. Energy Solutions has even agreed to self-limit the amount of foreign waste it will import. But I view this as the camel's nose, this legislation as the camel's nose under the tent. This is about shutting down all of our domestic processing and disposal capabilities. It is imperative that clean, safe nuclear power is at the forefront as we seek to solidify our nation's energy supply and foster a new era of energy independence and reduced emissions. As applications for nearly 30 new nuclear plants are expected over the next couple of years, we are on our way to fulfilling our commitment to safe, clean nuclear power. Not only will our environment be better for it, our national security will be bolstered, millions of households will be powered by clean, zero-emission nuclear power, and our nation's economy will be powered by nuclear as well. Nuclear energy is the proper course, and we'll all be better for it. The U.S. is on the cusp of a nuclear renaissance that will create countless jobs at a time when our nation endures near double-digit unemployment. These new plants will also boost our supply of clean and green-based load power. But without restoring some sanity to our nation's nuclear policy, we risk never realizing the full potential that nuclear has to offer. The administration's diversion from Yucca Mountain is a step in the wrong direction. This bill also takes us in the wrong direction. I urge my members, my friends on this committee, subcommittee, to see that clean energy be part of the U.S.'s future and oppose the bill. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Are there other members seeking recognition to make opening statements? Gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling today's markup. I think all of us understand the significance of disposing nuclear waste as we continue to examine expanding nuclear power use. At present, federal regulators, including the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, do not possess the authority to prohibit shipping radioactive waste to the United States. The bipartisan bill, of which I'm an original co-sponsor, being considered today, will ban the importation of low-level radioactive waste. Specifically, it will respond to a Utah company's plan to import up to 20,000 tons of low-level radioactive waste from Italy's shuttered nuclear power program through the ports of Charleston, South Carolina, or New Orleans. After processing in Tennessee, about 1,600 tons will be disposed of in Energy Solutions Incorporated's facility in the western Utah desert. Energy Solutions operates the nation's largest and only privately owned low-level radioactive waste disposal site. Its request represents the largest amount of low-level radioactive waste the NRC has ever been asked to allow into the United States. The agency also indicated during a recent hearing held by this subcommittee that there are pending applications to import waste from Brazil and Mexico for disposal in Utah as well. I commend my colleagues, Representatives Gordon, Terry, and Matheson, for introducing H.R. 515 and for their leadership on the issue of nuclear waste, which affects the health, safety, and security of this country. And, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for calling today's markup. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Are there other members seeking recognition? The gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Whitfield.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for having this markup today. I was an original co-sponsor of this legislation, and since that time I've reflected more on the policy that this legislation would implement. And I've decided in my own mind that relating to this Class A, which is the lowest level of radioactivity, that we may be acting prematurely right now. And I say that for 4 reasons. First of all, the Obama administration is negotiating, as we speak, a nuclear cooperation agreement with Italy, the U.S.-Italian Joint Declaration. And since the low-level waste that we're talking about is coming from Italy, I think that can create a problem there. The second reason is that since 1985, the NRC has issued 14 licenses authorizing the import of low-level radioactive waste. So there's not anything unusual about this particular application. Third reason is that this whole issue is in the federal courts right now. The U.S. District Court ruled in favor of the company that wants to import this waste, but the opposition has appealed to the Federal Court of Appeals, and so that is still undecided. And then fourth reason is that when the NRC witness testified before the committee on this legislation, they indicated that they had not identified any capacity issues with regard to Class A waste disposal. And since that was one of my original concerns, that's sort of changed my position right now. But I did intend to offer an amendment today that I think would address some concerns of a lot of people on this issue. But I've decided that if this bill is reported out, that I'm going to wait and maybe bring that up at full committee. And I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Great. Gentleman's time has expired. Other members seeking recognition to make opening statements. The gentleman from Utah, Mr. Matheson.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And as usual, in your opening statement, you made most of the salient points I wanted to make in mine, but there are a couple of things I will add in the interest of brevity, and I won't repeat your opening statement. I think the hearing that the subcommittee held this year, and also in the previous Congress we held a hearing on this legislation, I think those hearings were very instructive. They pointed out that, in fact, there is only one place, it happens to be in Utah, that takes this low-level radioactive waste for 34 states, that there are questions about the limit of capacity because these are facilities that don't get licensed often in this country. And so when we talk about periods of 20 or 30 years, that's really not a long time. And in the context of the 30 or so new nuclear power plant license applications are active today, and in a move to a more lower carbon future in this country and use of additional nuclear power, it's important we preserve this space. The hearings also established that there's been a lot of confusion in terms of how foreign radioactive waste was even considered as our policy has been set in this country over the last few decades, and what it appears to most of us is it was never considered because no one ever thought we'd be importing radioactive waste from foreign countries. I want to make sure, though, to address the one issue of whether or not this is an assault on nuclear power. I'm not here to speak for my colleagues, but since Mr. Gordon is not on the subcommittee, I think that people know that Mr. Gordon and myself are very aggressive in promoting nuclear power in this country, and we're the lead sponsors of this bill, along with Mr. Terry. And so I can assure folks that this is not some broad-based assault on the development of a nuclear power industry in this country. What it is it's an effort to put the United States in the same position as all the other countries in the world, because no other country takes another country's radioactive waste, and I would submit that this country shouldn't as well. So, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for holding this markup, look forward to the debate, and I encourage my colleagues to support the legislation, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Great. Gentleman's time has expired. Are there other members seeking recognition to make opening statements? The chair sees none. The chair now calls up H.R. 515, and the clerk will report the title of the bill.
H.R. 515, to prohibit the importation of certain low-level radioactive
Without
waste
objection,
into the
the
United
first
States.
reading of the bill will be dispensed with. Chair hears no objection. The chair now recognizes himself to offer a manager's amendment to H.R. 515 in the form of an amendment in the nature of a substitute. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 515, offered by Mr. Markey of Massachusetts.
Without objection, the manager's amendment will be considered as having been read, and the chair will recognize himself to speak on the manager's amendment. The manager's amendment in the nature of a substitute, which I'm offering to H.R. 515, is very simple and only makes one technical change to the bill as introduced. This amendment changes the chapter of the Atomic Energy Act, which will be amended by H.R. 515 from Chapter 8 byproduct material to Chapter 19 miscellaneous. This change, which will not alter the substance of the bill whatsoever, was recommended to us by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and we were happy to accept it. Does any other member seek recognition to speak on the manager's amendment? The chair sees none, and so are there any members with any other amendments seeking recognition at this time?
Don't you have to pass the manager's amendment?
I'm sorry. The vote then comes on the manager's amendment. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye. All those no. The ayes have it. The manager's amendment is adopted. Are there other members seeking recognition?
Final passage.
The chair sees none. I now move that the Subcommittee on Energy and Environment forward H.R. 515 as amended to the full committee with the recommendation that the bill pass. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye. All those say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The ayes have it, and the bill H.R. 515 is favorably forwarded to the full committee as amended. I ask unanimous assent that the staff be authorized to make technical and conforming corrections to the bills forwarded at today's markup without objection. So ordered. With the thanks of the committee, this markup is now adjourned.